Okay, so we're going to start with a mini lecture. It's interactive. It only takes a couple of minutes. It's kind of the important bit. So stay awake for the next couple of minutes. You can fall asleep after this bit, but this is the important bit. So I'm going to just share my screen with you and we'll have a quick mini lecture. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, this is the big secret of the English language. And believe it or not, I teach this to UK government. I do training seminars for senior civil servants about this aspect of English because they need to communicate with the general public and master their language so that they don't come across as patronizing or too educated, because then they're not accessible to a larger number of people. So what we're going to look at is polite formal language versus less formal, more emotional language. Okay, so we've got two questions here. Can you give me some help, and could you provide me with some assistance? Okay, they have the same meaning, but which question is more polite, more formal? Do you think it's A or B? Maybe just pop it in the chat whether you think question A or B is the most formal. So the majority of you are saying B, and of course you are correct. But the million-dollar question, of course, is why is B more formal? Does anyone have any ideas why B is more formal? So yeah, someone raised their hand there. Who raised their hand? Was it? Yeah, Kanisa, you can unmute. Why is B more formal? Do you know? Anybody in the chat, perhaps? Why is B more formal? There's a lot of silence. If you don't know,
I think could is more formal than can.
Yeah, and similarly, provide is more formal than give, and assistance is more formal than help. But why? But why?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, if you just look at the words, what's the difference when you just look at them? Okay, don't worry. I mean, until you're told the big secret, it's not obvious. The words are longer. Sophia is correct. It's as simple as that. The rule is the long word is more formal, more polite. And you're like, but why? And I'll be like, don't worry, I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, and then we've got the next question. Of the two questions, which ones contain more feeling or emotion, A or B? Hopefully you can feel that A is the answer. Can you give me some help? You can hear emotion in someone's voice. Can you give me some help? Whereas if someone raises themselves up, could you provide me with some assistance? There's less emotion there. Okay, so it's something to do with long and short. Okay. Okay, short is emotional. Long is formal or polite. Okay, the reason why we have this difference is actually that they are two different languages historically. We use them both in English now, but they're both from history and they are different languages, believe it or not. Okay. Does anybody know what the long words like provide and assistance represent in terms of language, in terms of history? It was brought here by the Romans. Do you know the language they were speaking? Anybody? Anybody in the chat? Latin. Anonymous attendee says Latin. Anonymous attendee, very good. It is indeed. This is a Latin language. And this comes from the Romans. Okay. But the short emotional words like give, help, anyone know where that comes from? Or what language it is? This is a less famous language. Anglo-Saxon, Grace Arthur's, correct. This is what we call Anglo-Saxon. This tends to come from Norway, Sweden, bit of Germany. If it helps you to think about it, these are the Vikings. These are the Vikings, okay? So just to give you some examples, we've got provide, and the noun, of course, is provision. And let's just give in Anglo-Saxon. We have assist as the verb, and then the noun is assistance, and it's just help in Anglo-Saxon. We've got require, and then a noun would be requirement. Hold on, let's use that again. And in Anglo-Saxon, what is that word in Anglo-Saxon? The informal emotional version. Anybody know? For require, requirement, need. Anika is correct. This is need. Okay, and I could go on and on and on and on, and you'll see that all of English is made up of formal, less formal words, emotional words. Now, there's more to it than just polite and less polite. There's more to it than that. What were the hobbies of the Romans? Well, they liked. Nuren raised his hand. Go ahead, Nuren. Hobbies of the Romans? Is it in the chat or are they speaking? Bathing. Okay. Yeah. Now, before the Romans could do bathing, let's call it hygiene. And before they could do bathing, they had to build these big, elaborate baths. So there was construction. There were more than that. Of course, they had a military machine. They had organization. They built roads, of course. They had science. They had technology. In fact, they had civilization, and they had an empire, and they therefore needed to organize it. So it was administration. And obviously to have science and technology, you needed measurement. And then you had all the information and understanding had to be stored and captured, and they had education. Quite busy, the Romans then. Okay, now all of that, and if you look at these words, that's a Greek word. They also had an empire. Construction, organization, administration, civilization, education, meant, all of these words are actually Latin. The hobbies of the Romans are our Latin words as well. And this is our important word here, education. When you write academically, you should try to use Latin words, okay? Because they are very precise, very technical, quite scientific, formal, and they are objective, okay? It's not very personal language, it's scientific language. And when we academically study something, it should be scientific. So the language of academic and formal English is Latin, okay? You can recognize it when you see it with these things, the shuns, yeah? These bits that you see on many different words, these are called suffixes. And then you would recognize bits at the beginning that we see on many different words like pro and re, and we call those prefixes. And you say, Adam, who cares what they're called? And I'll be like, you're right. It doesn't matter what they're called, okay? So we make these very long words using suffixes and prefixes, and that's how Latin builds meaning between nouns and adjectives and so forth, okay? And that's our very technical language. Okay, the Vikings. What were the hobbies of the Vikings? Any ideas? What did the Vikings like to do? What's going on in the chat? Could you read it out for me in the chat, Rudy? Hobbies of the Vikings?
I think paladin.
Doesn't matter. What are they saying?
Trading, boats.
Okay, trading, boats, anything else? And once they've done the sailing and they've arrived?
Create, that's what someone said.
Creating?
Yeah.
Before they do any creating, the Vikings were quite into killing. fighting,
Yeah.
and then drinking, and then very unsavory things with our women, to be honest. Now, if you look at these short words, killing, kill, fight, drink, these are Anglo-Saxon words, and these are indeed the hobbies of the Vikings, okay? They liked a bit of war. Yes, the Romans liked war, but the Romans didn't call it war, they called it conflict, okay? Killing, fighting, drinking, war. So the language is quite emotional, but it's also quite physical, okay? So this is something to add and remember as well. It's the language of body, physicality, and emotion, okay? It's not as intelligent as Latin. It's not our academic language. If you're down the pub with your mates, do you use Latin or Anglo-Saxon? What's it saying in the chat?
Not yet. Oh, Anglo-Saxon. Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon, of course. Now, this is important. It's the emotional language. So it can be, yes, it can be very aggressive, but it can also be very friendly. And that's the odd thing with the British. We're considered polite because of our Latin, but cold. Prince Charles is often described as polite but cold. And that's because when we're being polite to someone, we're not using emotional language. So we kind of separate things a little bit, which confuses other cultures who tend to mix both sides of the equation, okay? So we do use Anglo-Saxon. It has good value with friends or to be aggressive, okay? The best example of the difference between Latin and Anglo-Saxon, I can give you this word, excrement. It's a Latin word. It has the prefix ex, it has the suffix ment. It's medical English. It's not really funny, you know, it's not rude. People don't get upset if you use the word excrement, okay? They might smile and laugh, but they won't get upset. Whereas if you use the Anglo-Saxon for excrement, suddenly there's a fight, you know, and that I think is the best description of the difference between Latin and Anglo-Saxon, something to hang on to. And you'll say to me, Adam, that's all very interesting, but is that going to improve my creative writing? And Adam will say, aha, yes, it will. Different genres of writing, different types of writing, and I'm thinking fantasy, science fiction, romance, horror, will use different styles of English. Some will use Anglo-Saxon more, some will use Latin more. As a quick example, science fiction, will it use more Latin or more Anglo-Saxon, do we think, for science fiction? What's it saying, Rudy?
Latin.
Exactly. And we can think of a really good example of Darth Vader in Star Wars. He always says, impressive, young Jedi Knight. Impressive, long Latin word. Do not underestimate the powers of the dark side. Underestimate, long Latin word, okay? Now, he is using Latin because he's like the Romans. He is an empire invading us. He is evil because he's an outsider who's come and punished us with his science and his technology, and he's threatening us. By using all this Latin, he's like, be careful. I am the member of an empire with a lot of science and technology, the Death Star. Do not challenge me because I will bring you a world of pain. And this is what Latin can do to people. It can intimidate and terrify them. And when I'm in my lecturer mode and I want to scare my students into working harder, I'll start using more Latin. But when I want to encourage them and engage them in a more friendly manner, I'll use more Anglo-Saxon. And switching between languages like that is called code switching. Okay, so that's science fiction. It's often about an empire with science and tech. What about horror? Anglo-Saxon or Latin for horror? What's it saying, Rudy?
Anglo-Saxon.
Of course, of course, of course, of course. Because this is about fear, a lot of fear, losing control. Whereas if you think about Latin, that's about control. That's about, we have the tools of power to control, whereas horror is the loss of control, okay? Hopefully you're getting a feel for that now, and we can now bounce into some worksheets to practice this understanding, okay? So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Ka-ping. Right. Okay. Did you manage to add the worksheet into the chat, Rudy?
No, but I could share it.
Okay, no, it's all right. I'll share it myself. Because the students were meant to have been sent the worksheet on Monday in advance anyway, so hopefully they've received it. If not, don't worry. You can always email me after the event, and I'll send you the worksheets free of charge, or for a very reasonable commission. But here we go. Here we go. The first exercise, which you may have already looked at if you received the worksheet on Monday. Okay. Really simple task, was just matching the less formal words, the Anglo-Saxon, with the more formal words. Okay, really, really easy task. Really easy task. Let me just scroll down. Hopefully no one had any problems with this. Matthew, are you there? The word tell, what's the formal word for tell? What's Matthew? You can use microphone or chat. Matthew, are you there, Matthew?
Commented.
Commented is kind of
oh wait, inform even.
Yeah, inform is, yeah, form. Commented would be a partial synonym, so you're right. Synonym means words of the same meaning. Inform, correct. Inform is what is 2 syllables. Inform. Tell is 1 syllable. So we know inform is more formal. Also, we can make the noun information, so it becomes very, very formal. Nicked, hopefully everyone can see, is a synonym for stolen. Now, stolen is also Anglo-Saxon, but it's more formal because it's 2 syllables, whereas nicked is 1 syllable. Looked at is, of course, examined, and then we have the noun examination. Started. Anna, what about started? Anna, are you there?
Commenced.
Commenced, correct. Do you know the noun from commenced?
Commencing.
Is one of the nouns. There is the more usual noun is commencement, MENT.
Commencement. That's
So we
a
know
rare
it's,
one.
yeah, it's a rare one. It's true, it's rare. Then we have the word nice, which is what we call a partial synonym for fascinating. Okay, now fascinating is a formal Latin word. We find it in science fiction. And do you know Star Trek, anyone? Do you know who says fascinating, Captain, on the Starship Enterprise? Does anyone know that? That's Spock, the Vulcan, and he's the science officer as well. Okay, he's a bit square because he should be using emotional words to talk to Captain Kirk, but because he's a bit square, bit of a science officer, bit of a nerd, he uses fascinating instead. Okay, you might also think of Sherlock Holmes, who is a detective, scientific, technical. His catchphrase is elementary, which is a long Latin word. Okay, and then we've got sorry, I apologize, which is actually Greek, but again, they had an empire. And then said, commented. And you're like, okay, yeah, we're not doing a crossword, let's get on with it. Okay, here we go. You have to use one of these words in the sentence, yeah? So choose the correct word to go in the gap. Now you have to decide if the sentence and the genre of writing, spy thriller, is formal, scientific, science and technology, or less formal, emotional. Now we've got spy thriller. The government began an investigation into who had the vehicle. Okay, so you have to choose the correct word, formal or informal. Lee, are you there? What do you think? Which word from exercise A goes in the gap? Lee. Or anyone in the chat? Anyone in the chat? No one?
How to use the chat?
Which one is it for?
For sentence 1, do you see spy thriller here? Yeah? The government began an investigation into who had the vehicle. So we need to choose one of these words from exercise A to go in the gap.
Okay.
Is it a formal or less formal sentence, do you think?
It seems quite, the government began an investigation. It doesn't seem that formal to me. It doesn't really seem that formal to me.
And yet we have this word, government, which is Latin, investigation, which is Latin. And instead of saying car, we've got vehicle, 3 syllables. So actually, this is a formal sentence.
Okay.
Are we going to say
Oh, stolen. He had stolen the vehicle.
stolen is the correct answer?
Yeah.
Now, if I put the word nicked into that sentence, it would have the correct meaning, but its register would be wrong.
Makes sense.
Yeah, does that make sense? Could you mute now, because we're getting a little bit of feedback on the sound. If you put the word nicked, it would jar. It would change the level of formality. The writing would become inconsistent, and it would almost be like, this government is looking into who nicked things. What's wrong with this government? Are they not professional, or is it just bad writing? And actually, it's probably just bad writing if you get the wrong word. Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does that make sense? Cool. Now let's look at this one. Horror. The monster roared and chasing the terrified children. So we've got roared, one syllable in the verb roar. Chase, 1 syllable in chase. We've got the emotion of the children, and this is quite physical as well. So we're going to go Latin or Anglo-Saxon for this one. Matthew, what do you think?
Anglo-Saxon.
Of course. So the correct word here would it be began or commenced?
Began.
Yeah, of course. Now, if you put the word commenced here, that would be a strangely polite monster. He would probably say to the children, are you ready? I'm going to start chasing you now. And the children say, yes, we're ready. And then the monster's like, oh, very good. Rah! Like that. It would be bizarrely bad writing to put the word commenced here. So I always wonder why students try and use as many long words as possible in their creative writing. Why do you think that is, Rudy? Why do students try and use as long words as possible? Well, when I was at school, my teacher always told me, oh, try and use long words because it sounds more literary, sounds more educated. Now, that's really bad advice, actually, that secondary school teachers give us, because using long words willy-nilly all over the place, if it doesn't fit with the type of writing, as in horror, and if it doesn't fit with the rest of the sentence, it's a disaster. It's bad writing. It confuses the reader about formality, and it's almost like the author's voice is kind of suddenly becoming formal and the voice is changing. It would be like watching X Factor and listening to a singer whose voice is pitchy and it goes up and down all over the place, and it can't keep the same tone and correctly. It's just bad reading experience. Okay, we've got a detective story. The evidence was by the scientist through his microscope. Valerie, which word do you think? Looked at or examined?
I put examined.
Correct, because it's the Latin word. Scientist is formal, evidence is formal, microscope is science and tech. Yeah, so examined is the correct word. And if you put looked at, he might be a bit of a clumsy amateur scientist. Okay, fantasy. I am a famous fantasy writer. This is my genre. Happy days. Okay, fantasy. Grace. I'll never inform you, or I'll never tell you. What do you think, Grace? Grace? Is it in the chat, Rudy?
Someone said tell.
Tell. Nicole says tell. Very good, Nicole. Tell. Right. We've got short words here. More than that, so we know it's informal. More than that, we've got aisle. Now, in English, that's called a contraction. That's for speaking English, not written, not academic writing. So that's less formal. And then when we see this in English, exclamation mark, in English, that means emotion. Okay, so it's emotional, it's speaking, maybe they're being tortured by the Dark Lord, by the baddie. So there's emotion going on, so tell's the correct word. And fantasy doesn't use science and technology like science fiction, quite the opposite. Tolkien's novels, he was in World War One, he was horrified by the military machine in World War One, and he rejected science and technology, and he founded fantasy as the opposite. Emotion, spirit, okay? Okay, romance. Sophia, are you going to put Paul commented or Paul said with tears in his eyes? What do you think, Sophia? Are you there? Oh, said. Correct, Sophia. Correct. Of course. This is emotional. It's physical. It's all short words. You can imagine that Paul is on his knees physically as a broken man, begging whoever to take him as their partner. Okay. If you put commented, that would be strangely formal and cold and inappropriate to this writing. It would be bizarre, actually. Okay, right, science fiction. We've kind of covered this. Adam whittled on about Spock on the Starship Enterprise. Fascinating. If you put the latest developments in technology are nice, you sound like a bit of an idiot, to be honest. Oh, I've got this new iPhone, it's really nice. And you're like, oh, that's a really critical, intelligent comment. Nice. The word nice in English actually is 50%. So if I say about my friend, do you like him? Oh yeah, he's nice. You're like, is that the best you can say about him? Really? He's just nice. 50%. Nice is not an intelligent, nuanced, critical comment. Okay. My students are not allowed to use the word nice in their essays, put it that way. And finally, this is the most difficult one. Action adventure. I'm sorry, or I apologize, said Tom as he accidentally hit the criminal on the nose. This is a difficult one. Oliver, are you there? What do you think, Oliver? Any ideas? Oliver? Or is Oliver crying as he left us? Nothing in the chat. Anybody in the chat?
We got sorry or apologize. We got both.
Oh, we've got both. Aha. And that's because this is an odd one. This is an odd one. I think normally we go, I think most people tend to go, I'm sorry, said Tom. Why? Well, it's a very physical moment with this one syllable verb, hit. It's Anglo-Saxon. It's physical. Certainly for the criminal, it's a bit emotional because he's been hit on the nose. He might then cry, who knows? So, and then we've got this, again, Anglo-Saxon verb said. So I'm sorry is the less formal. You might expect that. However, and I'm sorry would be suitable to the context. However, because it's Tom speaking, maybe Tom is the sort of person who might say, oh, I apologize. Now, suddenly that's jarring. We've got this physical, emotional moment, but Tom is the type of person to say, I apologize. It's slightly jarring and out of context. What impression do we get of Tom, Matthew, if he says, I apologize? What type of character might he be?
Quite methodical.
Okay. Or
Sophisticated or pretentious. Maybe just emphasizing how he's actually not sorry.
Yeah, very good. He could be very educated, sophisticated, or very pretentious, who's kind of speaking in a formal way at an inappropriate moment. He might be a posh twit. Now, you can do that, and it almost becomes a bit funny when you kind of read it like that. Now, that would be more skilled writing, that maybe a writer is choosing to use a different style of writing to characterize someone by class. So he's educated, He's privileged. He's got academic English. Not everyone in the country gets those opportunities. The criminal might be working class, and we get this quite interesting juxtaposition in this moment, and this jarring moment, which is almost comedic. Now, that would be possibly skilled writing. So we've got to be really careful how we mix the terms, the formal and the informal. Sometimes it's just bad writing. It's jarring in a bad way, and it's not funny or interesting. But sometimes it is genuinely funny. Okay? And that takes us to the next page. Using Latin and Anglo-Saxon in skilled proximity, deliberately done to create humor. And once you know the trick to creating humor like this, you can write comedy fantasy, no problem. You'll be a millionaire. Once you are, remember me. Remember this session that told you the secrets of the universe. Okay. I don't know if any of you have heard of Sir Terry Pratchett. He invented comedic fantasy. Have any of you seen Good Omens on Netflix at all? Anyone seen?
Yeah, it's like in the book.
Yeah, he wrote that. He wrote it with Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman was a young writer. Neil Gaiman then went on to write American Gods, which is also on Netflix. Okay, so Sir Terry Pratchett, he invented the genre. He invented comedic fantasy writing. Just one of his books sold 35 million copies on its own. A few more books than I tend to sell, I have to admit. He was a sir because he was worth £1 billion to the UK's economy every year. The Queen was very pleased by that because she taxed him a lot. Anyway, he was great at what he did. This is from one of his books. It's at the start of one of his books, and he's describing how the universe works in his fantasy universe. And we've got a tiny sun and moon spin around. Okay, so that's quite short words, kind of quite funny, quite cute. But then we get into on a complicated orbit to induce seasons. Complicated is Latin. Complication, the noun. Induction, we know the noun, it's Latin. Probably nowhere else in the multiverse Latin. Is it sometimes necessary Latin? For an elephant, a Latin word again, because of ANT, to cock a leg to allow the sun to go past. Okay. Ooh. So what does this mean? Basically, there's this world called Discworld that's being carried through space by an elephant. And we get this complex description of how the universe works, astrophysics, scientific, technological. It's complicated. Nowhere else in the multiverse is it sometimes necessary for an elephant to cock a leg to allow the sun to go past. Boom. Okay. Matthew, which word is funny, or at least made you smile anyway? Matthew? Or you can write it in the chat if you don't want to say it out loud. Correct, Matthew. Correct. That is the word. Very good. Now, to cock a leg means to lift a leg, but it also kind of has that double meaning in English. But why is it funny? Just saying that on its own isn't always funny. If a dog cocks a leg, isn't always funny. The reason that it works as humor is that what we've got is this long scientific, technological explanation of how a universe works. It's becoming quite boring. The grammar is quite complex, and you're like, oh, what are you trying to say, mate? And then it's like, necessary to cock a leg to allow the sun to go past. So the elephant cocks its leg and the sun goes under this giant elephant. And it's the contrast, it's the punchline of the short Anglo-Saxon meeting the long Latin sentence. So many jokes in English are a long question with a short punchline, and when you deliberately use Anglo-Saxon at the end of a Latin sentence, that jar, when it's deliberately done, gives you a nice punchline. Very similar examples here. Very similar. Okay. This is by A J Dalton. Okay. Lord Ponsonby, upper class, educated, insisted that all individuals understood how very educated, important, and powerful he was. He would consume the finest and most delicious cuisines and refused to admit he ever farted. Now, again, we've got all these long Latin words talking about the sophistication of Lord Ponsonby, who refused to ever admit he farted. physical, emotional, Anglo-Saxon. It makes some readers laugh, okay? Not all readers, but some. Sometimes humor is a matter of taste. I don't know if you've heard of Roald Dahl, one of the most famous YA fantasy writers the UK has ever produced. He's dead now, but you might know the movie Matilda, The Witches. Those were written by Roald Dahl. In England once there lived a big and wonderfully clever pig. To everybody it was plain that Piggy had a massive brain. This makes some people smile and laugh. Why? Well, big pig, Anglo-Saxon animal. We don't expect education, formality, or Latin, but we get wonderfully massive brain. That jarring contrast, it makes some people smile. Again, by Sir Terry Pratchett. Although it was a complicated recipe, one taste had been enough to know that it was made out of fish entrails marinated for several years in a vat of shark sick. Some people like that. Very similar to A. Okay. Now we come to Despicable Me. Despicable Me. Does anybody know this movie? Valerie, do you know the movie Despicable Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Gru, do you know what type of character Gru is? Valerie?
I'm not sure. Like,
his job, he's an evil scientist.
yeah.
He's an evil, and he wants to take over the world. And he's got all these sophisticated plans. And he's a scientist. He's cold. He doesn't. But suddenly he gets lumbered with Agnes. Do you know who Agnes is? Valerie? Okay, I'll tell you. Basically, this scientist, by chance, has to kind of adopt 3 young children. And they kind of need him to be emotional and care for them. And he doesn't like children. He's an evil mastermind. He hates children. He wants nothing to do with children. And the youngest of the children is Agnes. And Gru is almost, she's so emotional and needy, and that he doesn't even want to be in her presence. And Agnes is asking for ice cream. And she's like, pretty please. And Gru, as the scientist, responding to this request for a pretty please, says, the physical appearance of the please makes no difference. And Agnes looks at him blankly because he's using long Latin educated words that she doesn't understand. So he then switches, still no. Matthew, does that make you laugh? Matthew, does it make you laugh? Matthew's gone to sleep, I think. Valerie, does that make you laugh, that joke? There's a universal silence, Rudy. Maybe they're not laughing. Maybe they're not laughing. But basically the joke works on long Latin words. The child doesn't understand, so he switches into still no. Okay, still no.
Yeah, we still have some responses. Someone said made me laugh and lol.
Yeah. And Gigna said lol, made me laugh. There you go. They got a sense of humour. Or maybe the others didn't understand my explanation. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad lecturer, Rudy. Maybe I'm just a bad lecturer, you know. Now, if you've got spare time, you can go and see a master comedian using this technique, Bill Bailey. What massive TV show did Bill Bailey win at Christmas, Rudy? Do you know? Don't you watch terrestrial TV? He won Strictly Come Dancing. The guy with the long beard? The bald-haired long beard? Oh, never mind. Anyway, he won Strictly this year. He's a famous comedian. And on YouTube, you can follow this link, and you can see him do this comedic poem about a pub joke set in the time of Chaucer. So he uses sophisticated English with modern punchlines from a British pub. And it's really very funny. And you can see Anglo-Saxon build-up, Latin punchline. You can then see Latin build-up, Anglo-Saxon punchline. And it's the contrast, when skillfully done, that creates humour. But if you mix them badly, it's bad writing. And you're like, oh, all right, we get the point. Okay. Finally, you need to master it across, longer bits of writing. And a good way right at the start of a module that I'll get my students to practice is with what we call flash fiction, mini sagas, micro stories. They all mean the same thing. 50-word short stories, okay? You could write a short story all in Latin. You could write a short story all in Anglo-Saxon, or you could deliberately mix the two skillfully, okay? You could deliberately mix the two skillfully. Here are 3 examples, okay? A, B, and C, okay? One of them is mainly Anglo-Saxon. One of them is mainly Latin. One is mixed. Okay, let's start at the bottom, just to be perverse. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Most individuals in the medical profession commit themselves to preserving or extending life. Your comfort and physical health are their primary concern. They dedicate themselves to investigating your minor ailments and trivial complaints. They listen patiently and smile sympathetically when you attend their surgery. But there are a few exceptions. Okay, there you go. Is that mainly Latin, Anglo-Saxon, or a mix? Put it in the chat. Ready, go. Latin, 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 Latin. You are all correct. Good job, Matthew. Good job, Grace, Gigna, and anonymous attendees. Good job. Okay, this is all in Latin. Why would we write it in Latin, Rudy? Let's put Rudy on the spot. Why would we write this short story about a doctor in Latin? Why is it suitable?
I don't know.
Don't know. Come on, doctors. Science and technology, isn't it? Medicine, science and technology, okay? And it's all about their professional behavior. It's about how they see the world. I'm being professional. I'm helping you extend life. La, 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 la. They listen patiently. They smile sympathetically. So even these little Anglo-Saxon physical words are qualified by Latin. It's almost a performance. Yes, I'm listening patiently because I have to do that. That's my job. Yeah, I'm smiling sympathetically. I have to do that. That's my job. They don't really mean, they don't really care. But there are a few exceptions. So some of them are not committed to preserving or extended life. There are a few exceptions. What type of doctors are these, Matthew? What do you think? You can use your microphone if you want. What sort of doctor is this? If he's an exception or she's an exception. If they're not committed to preserving life, anybody in the chat perhaps? What's this doctor doing? No open question.
Breaking Hippocrates oath.
Yeah, more sinister. You're right, Matthew. He could be just curt, but perhaps more sinister. You know, we've had famous doctors like, not Fred West, Housego, Shipton, yeah. Dr. Shipton, who turned out to be a serial killer. He had Munchausen syndrome, where he was murdering his patients. And so the way this story works really cleverly, they're like, it's setting up Latin expectation, you know, very professional doctor. And then we've got this Anglo-Saxon, but very informal. In academic writing, we never begin a sentence with but. It's too informal. There are a few exceptions. And we're like, oh, there is this cold, sinister punchline that maybe he's a murderer. Okay. Let's look at B. Devil in the detail. I'm not sure demons exist. My mum says they do, but John at school laughed when I told him what mum had said. My mum now says John is probably a demon too. She's going to tell the local priest. Oh no, I hope I haven't got John in trouble. Okay, so is this Latin, Anglo-Saxon, or mainly a mix? Any ideas? You can either shout out or put it in the chat. Anglo-Saxon, Matthew says. Sophia says Anglo-Saxon. Grace says Anglo-Saxon. You are all correct. It's Anglo-Saxon. Short words like laughed, yeah, trouble, emotional. It's not science and technology, importantly. It's demons. Demons are faith, will, spirit. It's not science and technology. It's the opposite. So this is fantasy. This is fantasy. Specifically, it's YA, young adult fantasy. Now, young adults haven't had full education yet, so we expect them to be using shorter words as well. So it's suitable to fantasy, it's suitable to the young characters, and it's suitable to the ideas of faith and spirit and magic, okay? And the emotion. So hopefully you can see why it's written in that style. And this is good writing. This is good writing, okay? It's not rocket science. It's a bag of tricks. This is one of my catchphrases. It's a bag of tricks. You can learn the bag of tricks and then be a successful writer. Certain universities will tell you, oh, no, no, no. You need the X factor. You need that thing. You need to have that special gift to be a writer. Let me tell you, as a prize-winning international successful author of science fiction and fantasy, that's hokum. It's not true. You can learn the things that make writing good or bad, and I will teach them to you at Middlesex, okay? And finally, this one. It all comes out in the wash. The young washing machine would shake with excitement when the family visited it and asked that it clean their clothes. But after a few years, the family didn't seem to like the machine anymore. Some men came to take it away, and the washing machine never saw the family again. The end. So, is that Latin, Anglo-Saxon, or a mix? Put it in the chat. Of course, it's the mix. Very good, very, very, very good. Now, difficult question for you though. Why use a mix? Why use a mix? Tricky one. Yeah, the genre isn't entirely clear. What are the messages? Tricky one. Okay, we've got a chat. Mix of long and short words, correct. Now, why is it suitable to use a mix of long and short words in this story? Yes, it's a mixture of older and younger generations. Very good. It's a young washing machine. Meet a wider audience? Yes, because this can engage an adult audience and a younger audience. Yeah, makes it a more interesting read. It certainly is challenging us intellectually, swapping between two generations, swapping between the science and tech of the machine, of the washing machine, and then the emotions of human beings. And actually, if you look at this could be a social political message about consumption society where we use things and throw them away, discard them, and we damage the environment. And there are kind of intellectual messages here that are kind of more adult, but we also want to engage younger audiences as well on an emotional level. And we want to engage all audiences on an emotional level. So this is actually quite sophisticated writing. The family didn't like it. Plot changes the context. Yeah, there is a kind of how their worlds don't come together in harmony, and this is kind of environment, nature versus the science and tech of human creation, and they don't work together. Nature and science and tech don't work seamlessly. That makes this a very sympathetic style to the narratives, messages, and story shape. And again, it's good writing. Okay. So there's a lot to think about when you're going to do a bit of creative writing. Don't just think, oh, well, here's a story, blah, 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 blah. You've got to think about the way you organize phrasing. Because if you do it badly, it's just bad writing. You could use it well to create humor or to create these social political messages about science and nature. Otherwise, it's just a car crash, okay? Now, if you want to, you can choose a random object, choose the style you're going to write in, and then write it. And I set that as a really quick piece of homework for my students, and then I give them feedback on it. And I will pick out individual words like wrong word, and I'll tell you why you should be using this word because of the sympathy of meaning, etc., etc., etc. If you want, you can write a 50-word flash fiction and send it to me to get feedback for free. I know, right? Rudy, it's amazing. It's amazing the opportunity they get everyone. Or instead, you could enter it into the Scottish Book Trust competition. Every month they have to have a 50-word flash fiction competition. And it's free to enter, and you can win prizes, and you can be published on their website. They are a government charity. You can trust them. You'll never pay. If you want, you can wait for my feedback. I'll polish it for you, and then you can enter the competition. Okay. Hopefully you can see how we've gone from sentence word level to sentence level to paragraph level in our writing. And then on the Middlesex courses, I teach genre writing. We then extend to long short story or even novel plot length. And there's a task here which you could do in your own time. And you can send me a synopsis for a longer piece of writing if you wish. If you wish. Who am I to tell you all this? I am Dr. Adam Dalton with a PhD in creative writing, but I'm also a very successful published writer of science fiction, fantasy, a bit of horror, a bit of romance, and I write academically on the genres as well. And Middlesex teaches genre more than most universities in the UK. Most universities in the UK tend to focus on literary fiction, which is all well and good, but it doesn't sell as much as genre writing. So I do recommend you consider taking on genre. Okay, right, our time is nearly up. We have time for a question from each of you. I'm going to bounce around. Do put your microphone on. Valerie, do you have any questions about studying at Middlesex?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay, that's fine. Lee, any questions? Oh, Lee, where's Lee? Lee's run away. Okay,
no, I don't. No, I don't actually. But thank you for the session.
Hey, it's a pleasure. If you want to drop me a line, it's on that worksheet. If you haven't got the worksheet, I'll just put in the chat. Rudy, could you put in the chat my email address?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Lee. Nuran, any questions?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, last chance. Okay, Anika. No?
Yeah, no.
Okay, cool. Does anyone want to know if we're studying face-to-face or online only in September? Do ask. Grace? Grace, any questions? Grace has fallen asleep, I think. Sophia? Sophia? Microphone's off. Sophia? Oh, maybe it's gone in the chat. No thanks. Grace says no thanks. What made you want to write sci-fi? Sophia asks. Well, actually, I started writing fantasy first because my mum bought me a book when I was 15 called Magician by Raymond E. Feist. It was 1,000 pages. And it was about a young boy who becomes a wizard. And I was a young boy at 15 who wanted to become a wizard. And I read that. I was like, and it blew my mind. And I'm like, this is the sort of stuff I want to write. I want to kind of live in those worlds. And it form of escapism. Yeah, I just enjoyed it. I grew up reading fantasy. And then I realized the dark side was sci-fi. And I watched Star Wars and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, I just kind of enjoy kind of living in those worlds, and sometimes you can make a living out of it. Nicole, any questions, Nicole? No, all good, thank you. I really enjoyed the session. You're welcome. Toonie? No questions. Okay. Well, then I'll volunteer the information. At the end of September, we will have hybrid teaching. Some of our modules will be face-to-face, specifically the creative writing modules. And if you're going to study journalism, those used the news studio, they will be face-to-face. And you'd be expected to come into the university once or twice a week. There will be a couple of modules which you can select, which are 100% online, but there are video lectures recorded there, etc., etc., etc. So we have a hybrid model. You know, we have to limit how much people are coming on campus, and we can't have 20,000 students on campus all at the same time every day because of the pandemic. But we are introducing some face-to-face because we understand the value of interaction. There are certain task types when we're teaching that can only really be done face-to-face as well. So there are more learning opportunities when there is some face-to-face with particular subjects and disciplines. Any other questions before we're done?
Yeah, actually, if I'm currently a student at Middlesex, but on another course, fine art, do you know anything about transferring to creative writing, for example?
Absolutely. So,
would I?
are you more interested in transferring to BA English that contains creative writing, or creative writing journalism, Anna?
I believe English, because I'm not really into journalism. Yes.
Okay. So the easy thing to do is to contact the program leader for English, Anna Sharalambadu. Can you put this in the chat for me, Rudy? Because I don't seem to be able to access the chat.
So basically, we can't access the chat. You can only access it if someone like ask a question that you type in the answer. You can just, yeah.
Can you type in?
No, I can't type in.
Anna, can you just say?
Yeah.
Just open a. This is madness. Technology.
Yeah, sure.
Just right.
I just sent the thing.
Okay, here we go. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna saying. Okay, I can't even type, Rudy.
What do you want me to type?
A dot.
Okay.
CHARA LAMB IDOU Charalambadu at mdx.ac.uk.
Okay, can you just repeat that, please?
Okay, so A dot, ready?
Yeah.
CHARA.
Okay.
LAMB.
B, yeah.
IDOU.
Yeah.
At mdx.ac.uk.
Okay.
Is that in the chat?
Yeah.
I can't see it.
You can't. Oh, yeah. Jigna's added it.
Yeah. I see it.
Can you see it, Anna?
No, I just see the question, but I don't see any comments about it. Oh yeah, now I can see it. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you got it. Okay, so
yep.
So that's the program leader for English. Her name's Anna. I work with Anna.
Nice.
I work with Anna every day. So if you just drop her a line and said, Adam says you'll help me change degree course, Anna will facilitate all of that for you.
All right. Thank you.
Otherwise, contact me directly, a.dalton@mdx.ac.uk, and I'll help you do it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you for the lecture.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure. If you want your money back, let me know. They didn't pay for this, did they, Rudy? Okay, cool. Okay. Any other questions? Because otherwise we're done, people. If you think of a question, email me, a.dalton@mdx.ac.uk. Okay? It's on the worksheet. If you haven't got the worksheet, email me and I'll email you the worksheet. Okay, that's it. Bye, people. Yes, Nicole Dragos, you could. Yes, you can send me a short story. Of course you can. You're welcome, Nicole Silverstone. It was a pleasure. Nicole Dragos, yeah, do send me something. Go ahead.
Sorry, by the way, when is the deadline for the short stories, or is it a monthly competition?
It's every month.
Ah, interesting. Okay, thank you.
No problem. No problem. Thank you so much. Bye, Gina. Or Gina. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Bye, Adam. It's Gina.
Bye. Bye, Matthias. Bye, Nicole. Bye, anonymous attendee. Bye, Anika.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye. That just left Gina. They're all disappearing. Rudy.
Yeah.
Phew.
Okay, perfect.
Phew. How did you get a number for how many we had in total?
Yeah, so basically we had 28.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. Do you know, and if I just hijacked a student from another degree course, did you hear that?
Yeah. So I was like, eh? No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Oh dear. I've got my department meeting tomorrow, and they'll all be like, "How did it go? How did it go?" And I'm like, "I've stolen a student, Anna."
It was very interactive as well. So
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It works.
Yeah.
You know, there are. So imagine like these UCAS students, right? They've put down 5 universities, and a lot of them want